Welcome. In this video, you'll be learning what songs written in the period 1795 to 1930 tell historians about living and working conditions in Britain. This is an unusual way of studying, and I hope it provides for both a fun and refreshing experience. So, why else would we choose to study this topic? A major theme in the discussion of 19th century social history lies in the ambiguity of the word poor. By examining songs written by the poor themselves, we can directly access their account of living and working conditions. Secondly, songs provided a means for social groups to unify. The growth of towns, and especially the metropolis, had marginalised many of these individuals, whereas singing reflected their integrated selves. Of course, the use of song as a historical source has been criticised. One common argument suggests that, as most songs survived in printed collections, and as most folk song collectors were middle class, what remains is a therefore heavily mediated example of the true past. Nevertheless, most historians believe that an engagement with vernacular culture helps to establish a deeper understanding of Britain's social history. Therefore, songs cannot be studied in isolation from social and cultural processes, such as the formation of living and working conditions between 1795 and 1930. Although requiring careful consideration, historians have already drawn upon literary sources in order to better their knowledge of living and working conditions. Dickens is perhaps the most established author of this time period and provides an excellent insight. For instance, in Oliver Twist, Oliver famously begs, "Please sir, can I have some more?" suggesting the presence of hunger in the workplace. In Great Expectations, Pip is ashamed of his black face and hands, illustrating the dirty nature of work in this period. As a similar media source, surely there is no reason why songs are not great learning material. The following video contains the first two verses from the song Poverty Knocks.
Up every morning at 5, I wonder that we keep alive. Tired and yawning, another cold morning, it's back to the dreary old drive. Oh dear, we're going to be late. Gaffer is stood at the gate. We're out of pocket, our wages they'll dock it. We'll have to buy grub on the slate.
As you can tell, Poverty Knocks has a lot to offer in relation to living and working conditions during this period. The debate on British people's standard of living in the early industrial period, which has for some time been dormant, was revived in the later 1950s and has continued briskly ever since. There is no doubt that Poverty Knock is a useful source for this debate. The first verse describes the demanding and repetitive nature of work. The singers are up in the morning at 5 and question their own ability to continue working, as it is a dreary process. Undoubtedly, this reflects anger directed towards the long working hours during the 19th century. It also corroborates the opinion of most historians, who find that work discipline and hours were intensified after the onset of industrial change. For instance, ironworks in the Black Country by the 1860s were working 12-hour shifts, with just 1.5 hours allowed off for meals. In its exasperated tone, Poverty Knocks is expressing criticism of such systems. On the other hand, the song indicates that most workers were indeed deserving poor. This means standing above a line of low-grade respectability, giving little trouble and keeping mostly out of sight. Although the singers are frustrated, they always return to work, perhaps using song and creativity as their means to escape the cycle. It is likely that Poverty Knocks was sung by a variety of workers and ages. Its description of harsh conditions points towards a widespread lack of regulation in the workplace. Indeed, this was apparent throughout the period. For instance, in Stourbridge, the only industry to regulate the age and sex of workers was mining, and most children began work at just 8. By all accounts, the song may have been sung by children of such a young age. This matter was made worse by the fact that so many employers were beyond the orbit of inspection. By virtue of their small size alone, many were exempt from pressure by the government. Songs such as Poverty Knocks, therefore, could have been desperate attempts at protest. The second verse of the song illustrates the harsh nature of factory management and the neglect shown by the upper classes. The gaffer had the power to dock wages, signifying a stark power divide. This relationship was also written about by a number of social critics and novelists, who were not so much concerned about the gross inequality between the rich and poor, rather a lack of connection, and the sense that the classes no longer felt responsible for one another. Certainly, Poverty Knocks demonises the middle and upper classes, although it does not necessarily blame them for poor living and working conditions. In this song, wages were docked for a reason as simple as being late. This was a common occurrence. For trivial offences such as making a noise, swearing or disobeying orders, a common punishment was a diet of just bread and potatoes for 48 hours. For more severe offences, masters were empowered to confine workers for up to 24 hours. Once more, Poverty Knocks serves as a protestation directed against this injustice. The next song, The Collier's Rant, is slightly more optimistic.
As me and me Murray were going to walk, we met with the devil, it was in the dark. Out from me pick, he'd been in the net, and I knocked off his horns, his hands and his feet.
Both the first verse and the chorus of The Collier's Rant contain lyrics far more empowering than Poverty Knocks, and indicate a different state of living and working conditions. In the first verse, the song describes meeting the devil and knocking off his horns. This would suggest that, despite all adversity, the working class survived and were progressing. It is a declaration of unity and solidarity. It is true that, besides attempting to raise wages and improve conditions, the rise of unions also provided their members with insurance against unemployment, sickness and accidents. Moreover, studies have found that increasingly the working class were able to drink beer with their meals. This may have increased optimism and certainly the creative spirit to write songs such as The Collier's Rant. So, what do songs tell us about living and working conditions? By studying both Poverty Knocks and The Collier's Rant, we have obtained a unique outlook on the topic. Poverty Knocks suggests that work in this period was arduous and that the working class suffered. On the other hand, The Collier's Rant is a more hopeful song. Certainly, historians would benefit from delving deeper into vernacular culture.